The Primacy of Mind, Jeff Gear, 2026. Forward. Although this text speaks frequently of ambiguity, it is not a defense of relativism. It does not claim that every interpretation is equally true. Rather, it argues that interpretations should remain provisional, because experience always exceeds the concepts used to describe it. Beneath its phenomenological language runs a deeper existential concern. The self is neither wholly sovereign nor fully isolated. The reflections on encounter, compassion, relation, and participation point toward a more fundamental question. How does a finite and only partially transparent being relate to what exceeds it, whether other people, trauma, reality, the sacred, or the unknown? If there is a unifying theme, it is not uncertainty for its own sake, but humility before the limits of understanding. Reality is richer than our explanations, and wisdom lies in learning to participate in that richness without prematurely closing it down. Reality blooms beyond the flowers of language. Wisdom is learning to cultivate those flowers without mistaking them for the garden. Purpose. This text is a phenomenological framework, not a doctrine. It clarifies how experience forms, persists, and dissolves within consciousness, drawing on convergent insights from traditions such as the Upanishads, Buddhist phenomenology, Advaita Vedanta, and modern philosophy. The aim is not to establish metaphysical truth, but to describe structural features of experience while maintaining epistemic and ethical restraint. Core claim. Consciousness is the foundational field in which all symbolic, perceptual, and conceptual structures arise and decay. It is not a substance, not an absolute, not fully self-determining. Structures within consciousness are dynamic, attention-dependent, conditionally persistent. Consciousness articulates the real, but does not contain or exhaust it. Constraints. 1. The real is not reducible to consciousness, being, or coherence. 2. Consciousness is primary only as appearance, not ontology. 3. No final metaphysical closure is possible. 4. Direct apprehension may occur, but cannot be conceptually stabilized. Structural principles. 1. Gradation, non-ontological. Apparent levels of experience are structural variations, not divisions in reality. 2. Inertia. Experiential patterns differ in persistence. Low inertia, rapid formation and dissolution. High inertia, stability, recurrence, resistance. Inertia explains transformation without reifying it. 3. Conditional formation. All structures arise and persist only under sustaining conditions, including attention. Dissolution follows when these conditions cease. 4. Non-sovereignty. Not all structures are self-authored. Some arise through conditioning, trauma, external or indeterminate sources. Consciousness is generative, but not fully in control. Persistence and disruption. Not all experiences decay. Certain patterns persist without reinforcement, intrude against intention, reorganize perception and identity. A valid account must include persistence without consent, limits of voluntary dissolution. Insight versus encounter. Insight reduces structure, increases clarity, lowers persistence. Encounter may be intrusive or destabilizing, may increase persistence and affect, is not inherently meaningful or liberative. Not all disruption is insight. Ethical constraint. Because experience cannot always be reduced or dissolved, do not prematurely interpret. Do not reduce an experience to doctrine. Do not equate persistence with attachment. The appropriate stance is restraint, integration, non-closure. Liminality. Between internal, external, real, imagined, insight, trauma, there exists a persistent indeterminate zone. This is not error. It is a structural feature of experience. 6 functional claims. 1. Reality cannot be fully conceptualized. 2. Consciousness is the condition for experience, not substance. 3. Experience forms as temporary structures within awareness. 4. Structures decay unless sustained. 5. Some persist independently and must be integrated. 6. Aesthetic forms extend and stabilize experience without fixing it. Operational model SEER 5 summary. Experience is a dynamic system of interacting variables. Persistence, ambiguity, intrusion, affect, embodiment. Key principles: high SC, persistence, recurrence, entrenchment; low SC, flexibility, dissolution, instability. Outcomes are state configurations, not separate phenomena. Core variables: CAP, cognitive affective persistence, temporal persistence of patterns; MSI, metastable indeterminacy, capacity to sustain ambiguity; APCs, autonomous pattern complexes, intrusive semi-autonomous patterns; AI, affective intensity, emotional magnitude; SC, somatic coupling, degree of embodiment. Model structure: structure, pattern formation and persistence; interaction, nonlinear coupling; restraint, no forced internal-external collapse; states emerge as attractors, not outputs. Core principles: configuration principle, states arise from combinations; non-collapse principle, distinctions remain unresolved; interaction principle, changes propagate non-linearly; bifurcation principle, SC governs phase transitions. Attractor regimes: 1. Entrenched trauma, high CAP plus high APC plus high AI plus high SC. Entrenched trauma occurs when persistent patterns become emotionally charged, intrusive, and strongly coupled to the body, making them resistant to change. Persistent recurrence, intrusive autonomy, high affective charge, somatic locking. Outcome: cognitive restructuring fails. 2. Insight state, low CAP plus high MSI plus low to moderate AI plus low SC. Insight is characterized by psychological flexibility, tolerance of uncertainty, moderate emotional engagement, and low somatic attachment. Rapid decay, sustained ambiguity, weak somatic binding, non-absorptive effect. Outcome: stable flexibility. 3. Destabilizing liminality, high MSI plus high APC plus high AI A person may enter a destabilizing liminal state when unresolved ambiguity combines with intrusive experiences and heightened emotion, making interpretation and integration difficult. Competing interpretations, intrusive activation, high emotional charge, high SC, overwhelm, low SC, dissociation. 4. Rigid belief system, high cap plus low MSI plus moderate AI plus moderate SC. Rigid belief arises when enduring patterns are maintained by emotional commitment and bodily reinforcement, while allowing little room for ambiguity or revision. Persistent structure, low ambiguity tolerance, stabilizing effect. Somatic reinforcement loop, SC, AI, CAP, APC, persistence. Bodily reinforcement amplifies emotional intensity, which increases persistence and helps sustain intrusive patterns over time. Trauma stabilization, intrusive recurrence, resistance to cognitive-only change. Global claim, SC is the primary bifurcation parameter. Somatic coupling functions as the model's primary bifurcation variable, influencing whether ambiguity becomes integrated or insight or develops into fragmentation and psychological destabilization. Or more simply, the degree to which an experience is embodied is the key variable shaping how it develops and what form it ultimately takes. It determines whether MSI goes to insight, MSI goes to fragmentation, MSI goes to destabilization. Formal dynamics. This equation is a conceptual mapping, not a mathematically specified or empirically testable law. Delta state roughly equals F SC times AI times APC, comma 1 / cap, comma AMSI. SC times AI times APC is coupling over overload. 1 over cap is instability sensitivity. AMSI is ambiguity gradient. Domain applications. Therapy. SC must reduce for lasting change. Meditation. MSI rises as cap falls. Psychedelics. Outcome depends on SC minus APC coupling. Anomalous experience. High SC plus APC plus AI. Therapy. Enduring transformation generally requires a reduction in somatic coupling, allowing entrenched patterns to loosen rather than merely being cognitively reinterpreted. Meditation. Meditative practice often increases tolerance for ambiguity as persistent cognitive structures lose their grip. Psychedelics. Psychedelic experiences are shaped by the interaction between embodied intensity and existing autonomous pattern complexes. Anomalous experience. Experiences perceived as anomalous or extraordinary tend to become especially salient when strong embodiment, emotional intensity, and intrusive pattern activation occur together. Application note: artificial systems. Artificial systems exhibit low SC, low AI, no endogenous APCs, conditional cap. They have low somatic coupling, meaning their processes are not embodied or physically grounded in the way biological experiences. They have low affective intensity, lacking intrinsic emotional valence or felt significance. They do not generate endogenous autonomous pattern complexes, since they have no self-originating, intrusive, or semi-independent experiential structures. They may exhibit conditional cognitive affective persistence in the sense that patterns can remain stable or recur, but only as a function of external input, design, or continued activation rather than internally sustained experience. Accordingly, do not attribute consciousness, do not dismiss experiential impact. Core insight, Seer 5 replaces linear causality with a coupling-based state space model governed by 5 interacting variables. Seer 5 state space model of experience. MSI, metastable indeterminacy. Insight state, low cap, high MSI, low SC, low APC load. Entrenched trauma, high cap, high APC, high AI, high SC. Fragmentation, dissolution, high MSI, low cap stability, unstable integration. Dysregulated liminality, high APC, high AI, unstable MSI, bifurcation sensitive. AI affective intensity, and APCs. Orientation, move away from fixed identity, belief certainty, totalizing explanations, toward direct observation, tolerance of unresolved experience, ethical handling of persistence, relational openness. If the self is non-sovereign, then encounter is constitutive of lived experience, not secondary to it. The self is not best understood as a wall to be destroyed, but as a window to be clarified. Opaque is rigid, self-enclosed. Transparent is relational, permeable. This preserves individuation, embodiment, symbolic differentiation, without reifying separation. Love and compassion are therefore not completion or fusion, but conditions of transmissibility, the capacity to remain open without forcing closure. Within Seer 5, relational encounter modulates all variables. CAP is reinforcement or softening of persistence. MSI is tolerance of unresolvedness. APCs are activation or co-regulation. AI is affective transmission. SC is embodied attunement. CAP, reinforcement or softening of persistence. Cognitive affective persistence determines whether a pattern becomes more stable and self-reinforcing over time, or whether it gradually loosens and loses its grip. MSI, tolerance of unresolvedness. Metastable indeterminacy refers to the capacity to remain with uncertainty without forcing immediate closure, explanation, or resolution. APCs, activation or co-regulation. Autonomous pattern complexes may become activated in response to conditions, or they may be modulated and stabilized through interaction with other patterns or relational input. AI, affective transmission. Affective intensity describes how strongly emotional states are generated and how easily they are transmitted between patterns, experiences, and interactions. SC, embodied attunement. Somatic coupling refers to the degree of bodily involvement in experience, including how deeply a pattern is felt, grounded, and reinforced through the body. Compassion may reduce defensive rigidity, sustain MSI without fragmentation, permit traumatic material to be held without collapse. But these Effects remain conditional. Attachment may destabilize. Intimacy may intensify APCs. Compassion may deepen SC as well as soften it. Attachment may destabilize. Forms of attachment can increase psychological instability when they strengthen fixation, reduce flexibility, or reinforce existing patterns too rigidly. Intimacy may intensify APCs. Close relational contact can activate or amplify intrusive or semi-autonomous patterns, making them more vivid, persistent, and emotionally charged. Compassion may deepen SC as well as soften it. Compassion can either reduce defensive rigidity and soften embodied reactivity, or it can also increase somatic involvement by making experience more deeply felt and physically resonant. Higher compassion, therefore, requires tolerance of unresolvedness. Not, I fully understand you, but I remain open where understanding fails. I do not replace uncertainty with closure. I stay with the unknown without forcing resolution. Meaning emerges not from isolated structures, but from recursive interaction, self and other, memory and interpretation, structure and dissolution. Consciousness is neither purely inward nor dissolved into collective abstraction, but recursive participation across conditionally formed relations. We are empty ghosts without others, not because the self is unreal, but because it cannot fully instantiate itself in isolation. Truth is approached not through conceptual possession, but through increasingly transparent participation in what exceeds the participant. Final position. Consciousness generates structures, sustains them conditionally, allows dissolution, but does not fully control what appears, does not define the real, cannot resolve all experience. What remains is capacity for awareness, openness, tolerance for the unresolved. The foregoing argument should be understood as a formal articulation of one possible framing of experience, rather than a final ontological claim. Like the symbolic and poetic materials in the appendix, it gestures toward what cannot be fixed conceptually. Appendix. Rarity of insight. Across cultures and contemplative traditions, moments of insight are rare. Even when glimpsed, recognition can be fleeting, and integration is delicate. Psychological intensity, time, social conditions, and readiness shape whether understanding stabilizes. True insight cannot be imposed. It arrives in its own time. Poetic and experiential exemplars. I searched for myself, lol dead. I searched for myself until I grew weary. But no one I know now reaches the hidden knowledge by means of effort. Then, absorbed in thou art this, I found the place of wine. There, all the jars are filled, but no one is left to drink. Taken from Women in Praise of the Sacred, 43 Centuries of Spiritual Poetry by Women, edited by Jane Hirschfield. The Butcher's Gita, Essence. Liberation is not withdrawal from action, but freedom from doership. All actions can be offerings. Purity lies in awareness, not external purity of actions or occupation. Synthesized Poetics, Bridges. This section sketches a personal meditation on bridging insights across traditions. Vijada Amara. Gestures to the luminous and imperishable. Radiant emptiness and ungraspable continuity, held without reification. Samsara Nirnaya reflects cycles and directional histories, showing that rebirth and judgment are symbolic ways of describing consciousness beyond ordinary time. Vyapoha Tattva points to the interplay of cognition and apophatic negation. Thought clarifies experience, while negation prevents mind from claiming final authority over the real. These bridges do not resolve paradoxes, they invite reflection, allowing the mind to step back and encounter what cannot be fixed conceptually. Associated figures and parallel articulations, not authorities but diverse inquiries whose partial convergences point without resolving. Western perspectives in philosophy and phenomenology. Immanuel Kant, Transcendental Subjectivity. Baruch Spinoza, Mind, Nature, Unity. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, Monads as Centers of Perception. Arthur Schopenhauer, Will and Representation. Johann Gottlieb Fichte, Friedrich Schelling, G.W.F. Hegel, Absolute or Self-Unfolding Consciousness. Franz Brentano, Intentionality. William James, Stream of Consciousness. Alfred North Whitehead, Process Philosophy. Maurice Merleau-Ponty, Embodied Consciousness. Edith Stein, Empathy and Interiority. Jacques Derrida, Deconstruction of Presence. Eastern Mystical Thought. Lal-Dead, Ego Dissolution Through Poetry. Nisarga Datta Maharaj. Self-Inquiry. Sri Yukteswar. Cosmic Cycles and Consciousness. Bogar, Siddha Non-Dual Alchemy. Dattatreya, Avaduta Non-Duality. Gyaltsen Tokme Zyangpo, Compassion as Realization. Contemporary Thought on Mind and Consciousness. Bertrand Russell, Neutral Monism. David Chalmers, The Hard Problem of Consciousness. Galen Strawson and Philip Goff, Panpsychism. Rupert Sheldrake, Morphic Resonance. Noam Chomsky, Innate Structures of Mind and Biolinguistics. Illustrative Symbolic Cosmologies, Non-Commitment. A map of the primacy of consciousness. The map shows how consciousness as reality breaks down through subrations from transcendental subjectivity into realms of individuation. This traditional schema is included as an illustrative metaphysical articulation, not an ontological commitment. Sat, Chit, Ananda, upward arrow, attraction. Kutastha, changeless supreme. Maya. Chaitanya, universal soul spirit. Four ideas, Om, Ra, Desh, Anu. Om, greed, subrations, time. Purushas, spirit. Chitta. Buddhi, vidya. Manas, astral, causal, mind. Ego, Panchatattva, five senses, origins to mind. Downward arrow, repulsion. Sattva, spirit, essence. Rajas, passion, darkness. Tamas, illusion, ignorance. Yanandriyas, astral body. Tanmatras, rudimentary elements. Karmandriyas, goddess consciousness. Physical body, speech, grasping, walking, excretion, procreation, akasha, marut, tej, ap, shiti. From Yanavatar Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Kaivalya Darshanam, The Holy Science, Self-Realization Fellowship, Los Angeles, 1977, page 8. Ocean of Mind, Reality, Compassion, Gear. Sky, Eternal Existence. Upward arrow, more individuation. Individual consciousness. Jung's collective unconscious. Downward arrow, less individuation. Ocean, eternal existence. Conclusion and clarifications. This section restates the intended interpretation of the framework and limits the scope in which its claims should be read. The model presented in this paper is descriptive rather than doctrinal. It does not claim to offer a final account of reality, nor does it reduce experience to a single explanatory principle. Its aim is to clarify structural features of human experience as it appears within consciousness. The framework should not be read as relativistic. It does not propose that all interpretations are equally valid. Rather, it maintains that all interpretations are partial, since experience exceeds the conceptual structures used to describe it. Consciousness is treated as the condition in which experience appears, not as a substance or total explanation of reality. In this sense, the paper remains agnostic about the ultimate nature of reality while insisting on the primacy of experience as the domain of inquiry. A central implication is that experiential patterns are not fixed entities but dynamic processes with varying degrees of stability, shaped persistence, emotion, ambiguity, tolerance, and embodiment. Some patterns are transient. Others become deeply stable through reinforcement across cognitive, affective, and somatic dimensions. Accordingly, psychological transformation cannot be understood as purely cognitive. Insight alone is often insufficient where experiential structures are strongly embodied or effectively reinforced. Change must be understood as involving multiple interacting levels of organization, including bodily and emotional regulation. The framework also assumes that experience is not fully under voluntary control. Patterns may arise through conditioning, memory, trauma, social influence, or non-transparent processes. For this reason, persistence or intrusion should not be interpreted as moral failure or lack of insight. Finally, the appropriate stance implied by the model is one of epistemic restraint, openness to experience without premature closure, and careful integration without forcing final interpretation. Compassion, in this context, refers not to complete understanding, but to sustained openness in the absence of it. The framework, therefore, does not aim to close interpretation, but to prevent its premature closure. Recap. Phenomenological core, strongest layer. Experience is structured but not fully voluntary. Patterns vary in persistence and can intrude. Attention and embodiment shape stability. Insight is not the same as relief or resolution. Interpretive metaphysics, more speculative. Consciousness is the condition for experience, not substance. The real exceeds consciousness and concepts. Non-closure is structurally required. Original contribution. Persistence does not equal meaning. Intrusion does not equal insight. Embodiment modulates interpretability. Ambiguity, tolerance, is structurally important, not just cognitive preference. Experience includes semi-autonomous patterning that resists will.